Well, I appreciate you taking your time to talk to me. I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the music you make. Is it sort of electronic, pop, punk, a little bit? How do you describe it?
What did you think from listening to it?
Well, I thought it was a little pop punk, a little EDM mixed in.
Yeah, I'd say it's a little. It's got all that stuff going on. I like a variety of music, so anything I do that I listen to is probably going to come through. Especially, I'm kind of committed at the moment to just following whatever I want to do. It's gonna. I think in the past I've had an issue of being inconsistent, and it's probably going to be again wildly inconsistent. That's what I'm guessing at this point. I got criticism for it because I put out an album a while ago, and people said, what I had like a bossa nova song, and I had like a French pop song, and then I had more pop songs, and I think it's just going to be that way again. I've reconciled myself that it doesn't matter anymore. I'm going to do what I want to do, and it's just going to be anything that happens is going to happen. As long as I like it, as long as it sounds good to me and it's fun for me, I'm just going to do it. I'm literally not going to think about it anymore. I can't do it anymore. I can't worry about that kind of stuff because if I do, it'll ruin the fun for me, and I can't ruin the fun for myself anymore.
Absolutely. Well, who are some of the artists that influenced you when you were growing up?
Well, I grew up listening to a lot of music. I'm in from New Orleans, so I grew up listening to everything from rhythm and blues to jazz to country. And then when I got older, whatever was on the jukebox, it might be Patsy Cline, might be on the jukebox. It might be Hank Williams. It might be Roy Orbison, because a lot of old jukeboxes here. So I was exposed to a lot of that music. And then, of course, I loved 80s music and electronic music. And I still love, I'm getting more into modern music again. So I just have heard a lot of music my entire life. Bossa Nova, Serge Gainsbourg have been people that I've liked more recently. Not even that recently, but I didn't grow up necessarily with those artists. I kind of discovered them later. The Beatles were huge when I was a kid. I mean, my aunt had a record from the Beatles, and I didn't even know what it was. And I put it on one day, and I was just like, "What is this? It sounds really cool. It sounds really good." Um, and so, yeah, I got more into the Beatles as I went along, and the Bee Gees, and then I started dipping into a lot of the chord structures behind a lot of these bands, like the Bee Gees. I was like, why do these songs sound good? Like, what is it? Is there something magical about them that makes them sound as good as they do? And I discovered it was chord progressions, and a lot of times it's jazzy chords. More recently, I started listening to some of the songs by Phineas and Billie Eilish, and I was like, what makes these songs good? Like, just listen to them. So I was like, these are good songs, and they're fun songs, and the productions are really cool. But what is it about them? Let's go. And I swear to God, I cracked up a couple of those songs. They had major sevenths. They got jazz chords in them. I was like, I knew it. I knew there was something fourth dimensional about some of these songs. Because you can hear it, you don't know what it is, but you can hear it in there. And that's what you, so people, a lot of people will say, oh, the Beatles, they used pretty basic chord progressions. Well, sometimes they did, but a lot of those songs have got nine chords, they've got major sevens, they've got minor sevens, they got nine, really peculiar stuff, diminished chords. They have a lot of strange chords. So there's something concrete about what makes them good too. And I find that really fascinating as well. It's like, well, if they could do it, maybe I can't do it at the same level, but I could certainly learn some of that as well. And so I was really interested when I heard that there's that song from the Barbie song by Billie Eilish. I was like, this is a good song.
Amazing.
I checked it out and I was like, it's got a major seven. And I was like, I knew it. I just knew there was something elevated about it that I couldn't put my finger on. And it's those jazz chords. When you learn to put those little jazz chords in things, it brings a little extra, like MSG, a little extra flavor to the songs, especially when they're used well. So I think there's a lot to be said for, people who have taken the time, like I know they have, to go back and comb through, really, really amazingly crafted music and figure out why it works themselves. And they bring it into their knowledge base, but a lot of it's just not being lazy, frankly. It's just really working to learn the craft of something.
Well, you have glitching on my coffee break out right now. Where did that concept come from?
Oh God, I can't even remember that one. I was listening to the Sabrina Carpenter song that was done by I can't remember the name of the producer now. He's like a
Jack
famous producer.
Antonoff.
Yeah, and so he did like so I was listening to that one of these really wacky synth sounds. It's like sort of wacky retro synth sounds, and I just started playing around with some wacky retro synth sounds, which sounded kind of like video game sounds almost. And then I just kind of evolved from there. I don't even know if I like the vocals on it still. Like I'm not even I don't I guess I can't worry about it. Like it's it's sort of this weird kind of like early 90s or maybe late 90s. I'm not even sure like post-punk kind of sound came out of the vocals, and I was like, let's just go with it. So I went with it. And it's a song about somebody who is on social media. It's a very social media song. who wants to keep seeing if these persons in their feed, looking at their stories. I think we've all probably all gone through some of that. Is this somebody I know? I go and see who's looking at my feed right now, and then this ambivalence about obviously this person has kind of been one of these people who comes and goes from someone's life. Like there are people in their life who kind of flirt with you or they're interested, then they disappear and they come back and it starts driving you kind of crazy. I think that's called breadcrumbing. So it's kind of like a situation like that, and and then the which is kind of weird because it also reminds me of a story of life, but then this sort of like this idea that there's entertainment value itself in somebody kind of tantalizing you. So at one part of the hand, it sucks. But on the other hand, it's like you get a fantasy date. Maybe that it's better than being lonely, in other words. Like you can be completely lonely, or you can also, but sometimes you have a fantasy of somebody. So you have a crush on somebody. You have this fantasy of being with them. And sometimes that fantasy would be better than the real thing because that person might actually suck in real life. You don't even know them that well. So you're able to project sort of onto them this idea of, oh, wouldn't it be great if this person was in my life? And you get to enjoy some of that. And sometimes that's better than the real thing because I've had situations where I have a crush on somebody and I finally get to date them. And it turns out they're not the person I thought they were. And it kind of sucks. And I was like, you know what? I want the fantasy version back. It was a lot more fun. There was an old story I read. I'm a big fan of rock bios, and there's this story from these two girls, and they were famous back in like the I guess the 60s or the 70s for sleeping with all these rock stars. That was their thing for whatever reason. And they were famous. They're called I think it was the Plaster Casters. I can't remember, but it's one of these stories you hear in these old rock bios. And so they would always sleep with these guys. They'd be like, "Yeah, it was great, but he was no Mick Jagger." They had not slept with Mick Jagger, right? He's no Mick Jagger. So one day they slept with Mick Jagger. They said, "How was it?" "Well, it was great, but it was no Mick Jagger." The actual thing wasn't as good as they. It's a silly story, but it's a lot of what we think of in life are just they're fantasies. Like going on a vacation. You ever like excited to go on a vacation and you get so excited and you go on the vacation isn't that great, but you really enjoyed planning and expecting a great vacation. And if you think about it, there's some value in that too. And I guess it just goes back to this idea to me that the world is in your head. That so much of the happiness that we have is just something we decide and so, kind of, you shouldn't worry too much about whether the real life doesn't correspond to it all the time. I mean, you don't want to go crazy, but you have to kind of take your happiness where you can get it sometimes. So that's kind of what gets you on my coffee break a little bit. That's why at the end, the narrator or whoever says, these lovely dates we have, let me stay here at home. So it's like, it's these dates are great, but they're not really happening. But I get to stay here and I don't have to go do anything or deal with any of the mess that comes with a real relationship because I've been thinking about that again recently. Like I've been single for a while, and I'm like, and I've had some good relationships, but a lot of them are just they're great, and then sometimes they're kind of a pain in the butt, and then they end like they end kind of brutally and unexpectedly. Sometimes I'm like, maybe it's I got my dog, I'm pretty good shape. Maybe I should just enjoy my life as it is instead of trying to always get I call it next-itis. What's if I had this, then that would happen as opposed to me just being like, oh, I feel happy now. You go with that, you know.
When it comes to songwriting, do you need to have a beat or a track in mind before you can craft lyrics around it, or is it not always the same way for you?
Oh, like a beat or ah, I've just been kind of going into I use Logic Pro. I've been going into Logic Pro and just kind of tinkering around and seeing if something kind of interesting happens. If not, I just I shelve it. So I have some songs I got one that's I really like, but nothing's happened with it yet. So I just put it in like a folder and let it sit there. And then I move on to something else. But one thing I've noticed is that one good thing that's happened to me recently is listening to more modern music because for a long time when I wasn't playing music, I couldn't bear to listen to music because it made me depressed. I'd be like, oh, these guys are doing it. They're out there, they're recording, they're doing all this great stuff, and I'm not doing anything anymore. And I just would make me really feel sad. So I had to get back into listening to music again. And it was really painful. And that sounds really dumb, but I was like, let's do it. Let's open Spotify. Let's hear who are the top artists. That's how I discovered Dua Lipa. I knew Billie Eilish. I'd heard a lot of the name. I'd hear names all the time, but I didn't know what they sounded like. Even like Sabrina Carpenter. I'd heard that name a couple of times. Like, let's just go check it out. Just don't get weird about it. Don't be like, oh, I wish I was doing that, or oh, I don't like that. My stuff, I could do it. Just stop the whole conversation around it and just absorb it and just try to enjoy it and have fun with it. You don't have to like everything perfectly, but you can sort of get some fun out of it and just do it. And when you get into it, I think there's a lot. I could be wrong, but I feel like there's a lot of good music right now. And even some of the stuff I'm not crazy about. There's stuff that I like about it, like the Jack Antonoff production or whatever. It's like I didn't hate that song. I liked it. It was cute. It's please, please, please. That's what I'm talking about. It's cute. Like the lyrics are cute. You know, it makes me laugh. You know, it's not my favorite composition, but it's a fun song, and I really like a lot of the production elements. And I think there's a lot of really good producers out there who are drawing from a lot of different traditions and doing a lot of creative stuff. Like I know Jack Antonoff also did Taylor Swift. He has his own band, Fun, which is completely different. You know, it's like a completely different sort of vibe. You know, what I heard anyway was more like show tunes. The one album that I heard, I don't know if it was how you describe it, but it was really savvy. And so I think there are a lot of good producers out there, and there's a lot of fun stuff happening. Somebody said, this is going to sound crazy. And somebody said, "Oh, one of your songs reminds me of Kanye West." And I was like, "That can't be true." I don't know anything about Kanye West. I really don't. And I was like, I can't. I said that can't be accurate. I don't like anything I hear about that guy. I don't hate him. I don't hate anybody. But like, I don't like anything about it. And they played some song for me. So they sent me a Spotify link, and it was some song, and I can't remember, Paranoid. I can't remember. I don't know if it's an early track, but it has a lot of really wacky synths. And I was like, you know what? I kind of like this song. I kind of like this freaky song, you know? So my point is that there's a lot of interesting music out there. Um, and it's a lot of fun stuff to draw from. And I think there's a lot of crossover too. Like the interesting about the Sabrina Carpenter song, it's kind of an electronic song, but it has a little bit of a country vibe to it. So I feel like there's more of this mishmashing that's happening, and it's a lot of really savvy people who grew up when I was a kid, it felt like you were either a metalhead or you were like you liked electric or you had to be something. You know, that's what was my identity. I like this kind of music, and now I feel like it's a lot more open. Like people have grown up listening to. My cousin listens to metal. I know this metal song. You know, I know this. Have you heard this old Black Sabbath? You know this whatever, they you know this Wu-Tang Clan, they know all this different stuff, and it's all merging in a lot of interesting ways. So I think it's a really fun time to be listening to music. And so for me, to answer the question, when I listen to music, I get really interested in, I get sort of inspired. I listen to it, I'm like, hey, that's really interesting, you know, like the Billie Eilish or whatever. It's like that. I would love to do something kind of like that, but change it. And so then I just end up sitting down and just sort of like a lot of times it's like, how did they get that synth sound? Like, how did that, like, that's a really cool sound at the end of, what's the name of that song, that the big song that the Billie Eilish, the first huge one, I
Oh,
can't remember now,
yeah.
about the bad girl. And this is big,
Oh, the
well,
bad guy. The bad guy.
the
Yeah.
bad guy. I'm like, how do they make that sound? Like, it's like, so I just sit in Logic. I know he uses Logic too. I'm like, if he can do it, I can figure out a way to do it. So let's try a reverb on there. Let's try this on there. And then along the way, what if we just mashed it? Because I actually watched one of their videos with mixed with the masters. He's like, I just abused the hell out of that. Billy made this song on the thing I recorded that I abused it with a bunch of compressors. And I was like, let's do something similar and sort of imitate the sound, just that one. And then, and that usually leads to something while I'm fooling around. I'm like, oh, look at this. I never noticed this before. What's this arpeggiator here? Let's put that in there. And you start tinkering around. And a lot of times, and like then what's left? Well, write some lyrics for it, you know, and start singing something on top of it. And a lot of times the songs have been happening that way.
It sounds like you're very hands-on when it comes to the production side of the music you make as well. Why is that so important for you?
I'm doing everything now. And it's because, well, one is just the convenience. I can just do it all on my laptop. A lot of these tools didn't exist at this level when I was doing this a few years ago. It's like the tools have gotten really sophisticated, and I realized from studying some stuff like Ian Kirkpatrick, who does some of the Dua Lipa stuff, I started looking at the stuff he was using. And so you can Google now. There's like something called, it's called Gear Space or something. It has like all the gear used by a lot of these top producers. And I started looking at the list. I'm like, I can get. See, I thought a lot of these guys were still doing it on the laptop. They didn't bring it into a big studio, and a lot of it is just being done on the laptop now. Like this guy Chris Gehring, who I'm going to be doing, who did a lot of the Dua Lipa mastering, who I'm going to be taking a master class with in January back in Paris. Um, he does everything on the computer. So it's not like it used to be. Yes, you could do stuff on the laptop, but you really need to get into a studio. Now it's just like the studio is just a place where the people get together to talk about what's happening on a laptop. So I was like, well, holy mackerel. I don't want to say holy shit. I said it anyway. Um, I was like, let's just. When I started looking through the list, I'm like, I could buy this now. I could buy this. I'll buy that. I'll buy that. I'll take that. I'll take these plugins. Let's try that. I started buying all this stuff. I ran out of computer space. So this is a brand new laptop I'm on right now. I was like, okay, I need a better laptop. So I bought this new laptop, here in New Orleans, where my mom's having a hip replacement surgery. That's why I'm here. So I bought the new laptop, and I was like, and I realized, and I can get pretty close now by myself the stuff that back in the day, there's no way I could have gotten even close to some of these productions. I mean, I listen to the Dua Lipa stuff and I listen to my stuff. I'm like, I'm just not there. I mean, it's like a whole just breadth to the sound they're able to create. But it's not that I can't do it. It's just that I haven't learned how to do it yet, which is a huge difference. Yeah, I don't want to rely on anybody because in the past I had to rely on musicians and they would flake or they wouldn't perform exactly what I wanted them to do. The only thing I have left is female vocals because of my Cyberpunk project. So I've got some pitch shifting things that are kind of they've actually have these new pitch shifting tools that are pretty sophisticated that almost sound like a girl now. Because I've hired some girls to do it and everything has been great except the vocals. I haven't been able to get a girl with the right attitude for what I want exactly. They're either they're sometimes they're too good of a singer. You know what I mean? They're just like, "La," I'm like, that's really great, but that's not what I need. Um, yeah, that's so I do want to keep hiring people until I find the right person. I'd love to be able to do that as well. But yeah, I just want to be able to do everything by myself and I can do it. And that's what's exciting. So that's why I'm taking this master class in part in January because I just want to keep stuffing knowledge into my brain. Oh, like Phineas. It's all on a laptop. You know, it's like he uses some external components, but that guy, it's like there's like a couple of kids, him and his sister. These brilliant kids just doing everything on a laptop with an incredible amount of
Out of
talent
their own, out of their house.
out of their house. You know, so it can this is something you have to understand that like 20 years ago, there's no way you had to have a budget. You had to give a budget. You had to have a producer and mixing in. Oh, he does drummer, but even so, he could do the rest theoretically. You know, back in the day, you had to go into a studio to do it. You know, you could do certain parts. You could prepare some stuff on the laptop, but ultimately through compressors and mastering, all this stuff had to happen in the studio. And now it's like it's just that's gone now. All you have to have is your brains and stuff enough information in there, and hopefully have some good ideas, and you can produce some incredible stuff. So it's a really exciting time to. When I was in high school, we put out a record, and it was like we had to pony up $100 each, which is a lot of money to have like $700 for like 4 hours in the studio, and you had like one or two takes, and if not, we'll got to move to the next track, and that was it, and that's just not the case at all. So it's really amazing if you're a musician.
Who would you love to collaborate with then on a song in the future, either production-wise
Oh,
or
all the guys I mentioned,
music-wise?
I think they're all great. I mean, I hate to say, it sounds so cliche because I know that, that Billie Eilish and Felicia are so, successful, but, who wouldn't want to collaborate with those guys? I mean, they did a James Bond theme song. I've always wanted, I have like a James Bond theme song I've been sitting on for a long time. I just started redoing it because I was like, let's dust that thing off. I listened to it. I was like, that's not bad. All it needs now is production, and I could use some lyrics and change some parts around. Oh, I'd love to work with them. I'd love to work with that guy, Ian Kirkpatrick of Dua Lipa. I think I like their vibe. Dua Lipa runs a book club. They're really cool, interesting people. Um, so they all seem pretty cool. I'm really into the music I'm hearing these days, and that's really exciting because I don't think that was always the case. I think there's a long time I would have been like, oh, I don't like anything. But like I said, I think there are a lot of really imaginative, smart people in pop music right now, which is cool. But they're more adventurous, I think, than you've heard in the past. It's not so much just a bunch of bland stuff. I think there's a lot more adventurousness happening at the top level of music. Maybe people are hungry for it because people have gotten more sophisticated in their, like I said, in their musical tastes. Like, they've heard a lot more music, so they want more interesting stuff. So there's a market for it. Mhm.
Well, what would you like to say then to everyone who are fans and supporters of the incredible music you make?
Well, I really appreciate it. I just appreciate any sort of support at all, and I'm grateful, for anybody who listens to it and likes it. It's a big deal. So I'm just grateful for anybody who gives me support or listens to it. It's really welcome, because it's something that's been so important to me in my life, and it's often been something that I have not been able to do, or just like when I was back in LA, I had a lot of near misses with doing stuff. I had a lot of people that I thought I was going to collaborate with or were going to help me, and and they helped me a little bit, but it just kept falling through. You know what I mean? And that's what's exciting nowadays is I can do it myself, and I don't have to worry so much about it. It's just not as much now that I have other projects, especially because I was just breaking my back. Like I was working all these temp jobs, and I was so poor. I was living in this 200 square foot apartment in LA, and just it was brutal trying to make music full time and just being poor. Like when you go to Trader John, when you get enough, when you're going to Trader Joe's is you have enough money to go to Trader Joe's. That's an exciting experience.
Right.
I'd go to Vaughn's. Like back then, I didn't eat meat. Now I eat seafood. But back then I'd like get a big bag of frozen chicken breasts from Vaughn's, and it was like $4, and I'd be like, oh, I've got food to eat. And then I had a extra money. I'd go, we'll go to Trader Joe's. And that's like your indulgence. So it was really tough, and so that's why I stopped playing music because I needed to survive. Um, And so I started and I started Fashion Week Online, and that took a while to be successful. And so yeah, I'm just really happy to be back into it and to be able to hopefully to enjoy it with less pressure and do something that I want to do without worrying about whether it makes any money, because that's not the case for a lot of musicians who just have to either make it or get a job, and that's or do both, so I'm just grateful.